Hey, sports cars fans, Ray from Philly here, and welcome to another episode of a show that I just started recently called Sports Card Memories. So far up to date, I've done 7 episodes where I bring in fellow YouTuber collectors to go over their journey of the history of their collecting with the past, the present, and their future. So tonight is episode number 8, and I'm bringing on a fellow YouTuber I consider a good friend of mine, and I think you guys know who this is. This is John, Boggs fan. John, how are you doing tonight? Thanks for coming on.
I'm doing great, Ray. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. I think this is the first time I'm on your channel. I know I had Dawn and I had you on our
Yep.
channel, so it's great to be here.
Oh, thank you. We were talking off air. There's a lot to delve into. I feel like I'm going to be, when you were saying you're going to talk, I think we're going to both be talking a lot because you and I I think we're very similar in our approach in collecting, as far as like grades and financial and how we approach what we're looking for and the quality of the cards, like with centering and I, we're very, very similar. So yeah, I think we're both going to be yapping tonight,
Yeah.
which is good. So I've been looking forward to this one for a couple weeks. So all right, so let's get to the past. It's 2024. Let's go back to when you started. What year was that? Who got you started, or was there not a person? Was it a thing that got you started, or whatever? Let's
Yep.
go back to John, back in the beginning.
All right. The first pack of cards or baseball cards that I bought was 1978,
Oh,
and
1 year off from me.
yeah, so
79, I started.
I would get. This is telling you the difference of the times and how old we are. Um, I would get a weekly allowance of 50 cents, 2 quarters,
Yeah.
and I believe packs of 78 tops were 20 cents.
Yep.
So, I couldn't get 3 packs. So sometimes I bought 2 packs, sometimes I bought 1 in a comic book or some gum, so I had 50 cents to play with. So every Sunday after church, my dad would head into the local newsstand. He'd pick up a paper or whatever, and my sister and I would get to spend our allowance. And again, they had baseball cards, comic books, candy, you name it. So I didn't buy baseball cards every opportunity, but
Right.
I mean, I literally remember the inside of that little newsstand, all the racks of magazines and comic books and baseball cards,
Right.
and picking up packs of 78 tops. Why? I mean, I was in Little League. That's probably what just had the interest. My dad didn't collect.
Hmm.
My mom had cards as a kid, and
Okay.
she'd flip them against the garage door of some neighborhood kids. But it was either my grandmother or grandfather threw them out years ago. But she had early fit. We're talking early 50s up in Massachusetts.
Right.
So I don't even know what. I don't even think what she had. But
I don't even think of it.
yeah. Uh, so it wasn't, they didn't collect, so I was interested in collecting. It was probably just the fact I was in Little League, and hey, here's some baseball cards, and I would occasionally see a game on TV, even back in the late 70s. So that's really what got me started first, and then the
Hmm.
big breakthrough, so to speak. And I talked about this on my sort of Mother's Day video. Is I'll condense it here for time, but my mom found out that there were some error cards in 1981 Fleer
Hmm.
and some misnaming or numbering on some of the cards and all stuff, but also there was a 1979 bump Wills card that had a different, either the Rangers on the front and Rangers on the back, or Blue Jays on the
Right.
front and Rangers on the back. He was obviously played for the Rangers at the time,
Right.
and the error version was the more popular one, or the more common one. They didn't correct it until later on. So the corrected version was at the time worth $7 in 1981.
Which
Well,
back
for a
then,
9-year-old kid,
that's a
oh,
lot.
I had that card. I
Nice.
had the corrected version. And that once I found, I didn't have like a lot of the 81 Flair errors. I don't,
Right.
in fact, I'm like, oh, I don't have that one, don't have that one, but I had that 79 corrected version. And that sort of really got me interested in, hey, these things have like some value and they can come. And that just continued my interest and sparked my interest really in collecting cards. And I haven't stopped since.
Oh God. Yeah, I remember that Bump Wills card, and in the early '80s, there was also I forgot what year. Fleer had this John Littlefield card
Yes.
where
Yep.
it's like a reverse
Reverse negative,
negative.
I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that thing is worth even
Yeah.
in like a six. You know, it's worth hundreds of dollars. It's
Yeah. And
amazing.
I think I have the corrected or the whatever the one that's not worth money.
Yeah, so we're roughly about the same time. I started collecting '79 Topps cards, and yeah, approached the same thing. Did you get? Was there magazines like I was getting Sports Americana? I don't know if you ever heard of that. It was an annual
Hmm.
price guide book about this thick. It was like a paperback. Did you ever seen that? Remember
No,
coming
I
out?
remember current card prices.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah. That
before.
newspaper kind of a
Oh,
magazine.
yeah, it was like a gray paper, and it
Yeah,
was just this one guy from somewhere, I don't know, in the Midwest or wherever put this out, and it may have come out either the same time as Beckett or maybe right before Beckett did,
I think
and
so. Yeah,
I still have them in boxes in my
I
basement.
have quite. They're awesome.
Yeah, and oh, yeah, and some of them I have them marked up, like checklists and stuff and stuff, and of course, Beckett and all that stuff, those were the big ones. I really didn't get into tough stuff or
Me neither.
never got into like the baseball card digest, I think it
Yeah,
was something like that.
yeah.
But it was basically that current card prices and Beckett.
Right. Yeah. I used to get Sport Americana, which I think was issued by Beckett. It was a once a year annual book, and that was like a Bible for me. But
Yeah,
I remember CCP. Those were really cool. I have quite a few of those.
yeah,
So, all right, let's move into current day now. We're in 2024, and if any of you guys out there don't know, if you're under a rock, you have to know John Wade Boggs fan. It- the name of his
I have the
channel is Wade
Trust
Boggs fan,
Boggs
and
Trust jersey.
I remember first seeing your channel. Now, the back route drop for you is awesome, but
Not
if
even
any of you
close to what it
not
was.
even right, not even close to what it used to be before. Uh, before we get into what you're really doing currently right now, let's touch base on Wade Boggs. I'm
Yeah,
always thrilled to hear about this. You have an enormous collection of Wade Boggs fans. What got you into the Boggs? And you've met him quite a few times. You have a history with him.
yeah. Um, Started late 90s, probably 96, 97. There were so many I was a set collector, so starting off buying packs.
Right.
Um, I didn't build too many sets. I got complete sets for like birthday and Christmas. So I built up a complete set collection and just opening packs, but I didn't have any direction. Like
Right.
I was just like just buying random cards.
Right.
And there were so many sets at the time, the late 90s. Every card company, and there were like three or
Yeah.
four of them at the time, produced like 8 different sets.
Right.
It was getting crazy. So I didn't know what I'm like, I need to focus. And I said, okay, well, people collect cards of specific teams or players. I'm like,
Right.
ooh, player collector. I could see myself being a player collector, but then who do I collect? Um, my mom's from Massachusetts, always been a Red Sox fan. Thank you for supporting the Red Sox gear there. Love the old time hat. Um, and so, okay, Red Sox fan. All right. Well, I've always been impressed with uh, players that could hit for high average and get on base. And I
Right.
never what. Yeah, it's great to see the home runs and
Mm-hmm.
the Bash brothers with Canseco and McGuire and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone to hit for high average and get on base, have good eye, lots of walks, to me, that took more talent than lifting weights and just getting a hold of a ball and just
Yeah.
cranking it.
You
Okay.
got that right.
Nothing against the home run hitters, but and they get more of the attention. But I'm like, okay, Boggs, hey, I had a decent number of his cards already. Boston Red Sox for so many years. And he had just won a World Series with the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was glad because my Mets beat him in '86. That was a tough World Series. Don't get me started on that one. Um, and so okay, I'm going to collect Wade Boggs. So my local card shop, I went, over, a couple different, weekends or whatever. I basically cleared out every single different Wade Boggs that they had. So I'm like, okay, now what do I do? And then eBay came on and like
Mhm.
19. I'm like, one of the first ones in 1997 or 98 when eBay
Yep.
came out. I'm like, "Sign me up." And I went crazy. There was a time where I went too crazy. But and then it just snowballed from there where I tried to get as many different weight Boggs cards. If I saw a new set released, I was on eBay looking for it and trying to
Mhm.
outbid people. And one of the Boggs Trust members was actually one of the earlier nemesis of me back on eBay. Didn't realize it, and now we're good friends. But I cursed him several times when he outbid me in the early days of eBay on some Boggs cards. But
Right. So how many cards of Waybox do you think you have? Do you know the number?
I looked it up before this just to get the correct number, and with a couple that I just recently picked up, I'm at 5,510 different weight Boggs cards.
Oh my God.
So
And I remember and behind you, you have you bought this library card catalog thing, which is
yep,
awesome.
yep.
And I remember hearing a story about how you came about that. Touch quickly on the story on that, because
Yeah,
all your
that's
box
from a
cards are in there.
oh, yep, all my Boggs cards are in there. Uh, there was a local library in the town
Hmm.
that I grew up. They were moving locations and basically doing an auction to get rid of all the old stuff because they were raising money going into new location, buying new stuff of everything.
Hmm.
And I heard that they were going to have some of their library card catalogs up for auction. Um, Long story short, hot summer day with no cash on me to even buy a soda. Um, I waited. It was after work, and it was literally the last auction of the day. I'm like, "Are you going? When are you going to?" I had to wait to the very end,
Right.
and they had their 6 units, even with the old pull-out drawers and
Yep.
all that stuff. And finally came up, and they were auctioning off by unit, and I could tell there were some antique dealers hanging
Yep.
around also
Buying
wanting it.
that. Yeah.
And so the way they did the bidding was you whoever the highest bid could pick how many units they wanted, and if there's any left, then it would go up again for auction.
Sure.
And so I won. I forget what it was, like 105 or $110 for a section. I was the first winning bidder,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and they were probably thinking, "Who is this guy? Okay, he probably just wants 1 unit or something like that, and then we'll get rid of him, and then we'll get the because they sell for pretty good money."
Yes, they do.
Well, I was so tired and exhausted. Well, one, I did want all of them, but I'm like, he says, "How many will you take?" And I said, "All of them. Where do I go pay?" And I walked back, and you could see the jaws drop of all these. They're like, "Oh, uh-oh, we just got screwed." Yeah, it wasn't about the value. I wasn't reselling it or anything like that. But yeah, so I got all of that for like 650 bucks or something like that, all six
Wow.
units. And I actually sold the index cards on eBay.
They were
The
still in
catalog
there.
card. People bought them for like art projects and stuff. I made more money selling those index cards,
Oh my God,
and
that's
I made my money
perfect.
back and more. So that I mean, I was just like, it was just meant to be. So
That
I
was
love that.
absolutely
That
meant to
it's just,
be.
and it's the only thing it doesn't fit is PSA graded slabs. If it's
Right.
Beckett, it may fit SGC, but PSA is just a little bit too wide.
Right.
That's the only thing I don't like about it. Because I'd also store some of my graded cards in there. I
Right.
do have some empty shelves down there, but
Right.
yeah.
No, that's very cool. And you got a lot of you've met him quite a few times now,
I've
right?
met him 10 times.
Wow.
Um, and just at the national and at shows on the East Coast, either usually northern New Jersey.
Hmm.
They do a lot of Yankee get together
Right.
events. And so he's part of that. And he's been to, oh, geez, I think the last at least 5 or 6 nationals.
Right. Right.
Um,
Very cool.
so I rarely miss an opportunity to see him if he's up in this area or at the national.
Right. That's very cool. I mean, he was definitely 3,000 hit club member, one of the greatest hitters of all time. Yeah, you couldn't have picked a better player, that's for sure. And he seems like a really nice guy when I've seen you
Yeah.
talk to him a couple times, and he seems very genuine, very down to earth.
I even got a chance to interview him on my channel, which was amazing for him to agree to do
Yeah.
that. But yeah, you hear people who are player collectors, and some of them maybe they're they're gone. So there's
Right.
no opportunity to meet them. And then there's ones that, oh, I collect this player, now I have a chance to meet them for the first time. And ooh, how's that experience going to be? Is it going to be nice? Are they going to be friendly and all that stuff? I I could not be more pleased
Yeah.
with how
That's
Wade
good.
is to his fans. He truly appreciates
Right.
all his fans. When
Right.
you're in line, if you're there, if you're going to the National this year, and he typically comes on Sundays. If you notice the line for his signature, that line will go so slow compared to other players because he'll take 20, 30 seconds to say, "Hey, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. Hey, can I take a picture? Yeah, you can take my picture." And
That's nice.
he interacts with everyone, and truly, it's not just, "Hey, thank you. Yep. Hey, thank you," and not even look at him and stuff.
Right.
He interacts with all the people that want his autograph and stuff, and he truly does appreciate
That's
his
awesome.
fans.
I,
So,
I, I heard a story on a podcast one day a few months ago that he was part of when he was in the minor leagues, he was part of the longest game ever in the minor
yep,
leagues
33
against
innings, and I think Cal Ripken was
Cal
on the other
Ripken's. Yeah,
team.
it was the Iron
Pawtucket
Birds.
won, I believe.
It was Pawtucket Red Sox, I guess,
Yes.
maybe versus
Yep.
the Iron Birds or something like that, which is the Orioles
Mhm.
um, minor league team. And yeah, I heard this pod. It was the early '80s, and it was Boggs' team versus Ripken. And like you said, 30. Have you ever mentioned that to him or talked to him about that game? Or
No, no, I haven't. I think Marty Barrett was also on
yeah,
the Pawtucket team, and there's a photo, like a newspaper clip, and I can't remember whether it's Marty Barrett coming in to score the final run, and Boggs is like waiting for him at home plate, because so he may have been either on. I forget how the exact play works, but I don't think Boggs knocked in the winning run or maybe scored the winning one run, but he was somehow involved. And I think there's an image of Marty Barrett coming in to score the winning run, if I remember correctly.
it
Yeah.
was like, what was it, 33 innings? Something like 33 innings.
Yes.
That's more than three
Yeah.
games.
Over 2 days. Yeah.
I heard in the podcast. I heard this. The owner was home sleeping. They called him up at 4 in the morning. They woke him up to say,
Yeah.
what he wanted. He's like, the game's still on. It's like in the morning.
Yeah.
Funny. I couldn't believe it. I was when I heard Boggs was in that game and Ripken. I was like, that's a legendary. That's a legendary game right there.
Yeah, I mean, you think, okay, minor league game, was it that important? Like, why not just, I don't know, just,
To
but
delay it or
hey, they
something.
wanted, hey, it's tied. There's no winner yet.
The owner was furious when he got a call at 3 in the morning. He was like, "What happened? What's going on?" Hilarious.
Yeah,
All right, so also present day, we're going to focus on. You started off doing this one list, 100 cards for $100,000, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that. And now you've added a second list for $10,000.
yeah.
Tell people what's that about and how did you come up, which I thoroughly enjoy both lists, by the way. How did you come up with the cards for this list? Like, what did you kind of look at and determine this is going to be on the list and so forth?
Right. First, um, I've been collecting Boggs for 25 years ish. And I'm always going to collect Boggs. But
Right,
I got to the point where with my collection, it's like, okay, how many more autograph cards do I need, or how many relic cards do I need? So
right.
it's more, building that collection, but not spending, going after the super rare stuff. Okay. And when I got onto YouTube, which is a little bit over 4 years ago, one of the things that got me on was watching channels like yours, like John Mangini, like Mike Baseball Collector, and you're all into vintage.
Hmm.
And we mentioned current card prices and the early Beckett's. Well, even though I was interested in the current packs that I was pulling and going for the, Canseco's,
Hmm.
or, Mattingly's and Boggs and Ripkins and all that stuff, um, I always loved flipping back and taking a look at the vintage sets that
Hmm.
I love the vintage cards, but again, we're not talking about a 50 cents allowance. I had a few, maybe five, $10. But even then, with cards being 20, 30, $40, there's like, okay, that's just maybe one day. So
Hmm.
I always had a love for vintage, even though I didn't really collect vintage. So fast forward to YouTube 2020, pandemic. I figured I think give this YouTube thing a try, and that's what really rekindled and took me not in a completely different focus, but an additional focus to vintage. So I
Hmm.
wanted to build. I had some vintage cars, but I wanted to build a vintage collection. So this is where the list comes in.
Hmm.
I was buying random cards. I know I wanted to buy cards of Hall of Famers. So Mike Baseball Collector, he has that 4 decade set. I wasn't prepared to go into the 80s. So for me, like a 3 decade set of the Hall of Famers.
Hmm.
Well, starting off from scratch, there's so many options out there. Like who,
Hmm.
what? So I see all these cards on eBay. Well, do I want to go after that one or this one or well maybe that one? And I
Hmm.
don't have a huge hobby budget, so I got I don't want to say frustrated, but got stuck. Like
Hmm.
what I need a direction or a focus. And that's what I came up with
Hmm.
this list of 100 cards for $100,000. Uh, I'd see these videos of, people going to card shows. Hey, I spent $10,000 at the Chantilly show or, whatever. And I'm like, wow, if I only had, $10,000, what cards would I buy? And I'm like, man, I look at the national,
A lot.
$10,000 would actually go pretty quickly
Yeah.
depending on what you're buying. So I said, all right, let's go big. So it was just I just did it initially as a one-off. Hey,
Right.
if I had $100,000, what 100 cards could I buy? And then after I put the list together, I'm like, you know what? This is a pretty good list to go after.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get there, most likely. There's a 52 tops mana on it. Never say never, but
Yeah.
um, so I started working on that, and that was in November of 2022, and I've already picked up 48 cards on that list.
Which is cool.
But I was getting the low hanging fruit, the 75, the $100 cards, the
Hmm.
$125 cards. Now it's like 250, 300, 400, 500 and up.
Hmm.
So with my hobby budget, I'm like, okay, I can't get them as often. I'm saving up some money for the national. Hopefully I'll
Hmm.
check off a few from that list there, but it's a lot slower. So I'm like, okay, I need something else now. Okay. Cause
More
I'm
active,
back
right?
to my what do I collect?
Hmm.
And so I said, well, let's take it down a little bit. Let's do a more budget conscious list. So I came up with 100 cards for $10,000. So
Right.
average $100. So
Right.
that's more reasonable for me to go after more on an annual or more consistent
Right.
basis. So I created another list, and I was telling you before we recorded here, just picked up card number 19. So I'm almost at 20
That's pretty
already, and
quick,
that list
John. I mean,
was
that you started this year.
yeah, it was January, February, something like that. And again, I'm averaging like maybe $50 a card, so it's easy to pick one up here and there,
Right.
not break the bank, and pick up some really cool cards. And it allows me not to say I'm not going to buy anything off those lists because
Right.
I did at the Strongsville show. I
Right.
picked up 2 cards that weren't on my list, but they were cool cards
Right.
for a decent price. I'm like, hey, I like them, so I picked them up. Um, but I need that I need a list to work off of to keep me focused because
Hmm.
there's still so many out there that I would
Right.
love to own, and I have very limited dollars to
Hmm.
spend.
Now,
So
these cards, they're not obviously they're not rookie cards. Are they all Hall of Famers, or some of them not Hall of Famers?
it technically the and I'm trying to think the 100 cards for $100,000, they are all Hall of Famers, and most of them are rookie cards. Now there are some like some Hank Aaron, some Mickey Mantles, Ted Williams for like a player run, so I can try to complete a player run for those players. I had Kara Shremsky on there as well,
Hmm.
which helped me complete his playing
Hmm.
days run. A lot of cards that I needed were on that initial list. On the 100 cards for $10,000 list, I had a couple Thurman Munsons. I'm still that's 73. I just can't find a well-centered
That's a
73
tough
that's not
year,
overpriced. And it's just those 73 sometimes, gosh, with the centering or
and
the
the
print
backs are
shots, are just
weird. The backs are way off
yeah. Well,
in the
I
70s.
like that um unfocused background
Hmm.
of Munson there with him in that catching position. It's a beautiful card.
Yep. Yep.
But sometimes you get some print marks in there, and then the centering. Oh gosh, the
Yeah.
73s are tough, at least for my eye appeal.
Right.
And that's the one I'm missing for his playing days run. I had the 77 that I needed on the list, and I picked that one up.
Right.
But I think he's the only non Hall of Famer on that list.
It's a good list. I mean, especially the $10,000 one because it's definitely more doable for any collector. You know what I mean? It's a collector on a budget or whatever. It's definitely doable. You should write a book on this list. I'm being that serious. Like, you could do a book called The 100 Cars for 100,000 and another one, The 100 Cars for 10,000. I mean, I mean, the cards that you're showing, 75 Pete Rose, I saw on one in there. I mean, these are great cards. I mean, they're
No,
Hall of
that yeah,
Famers.
Rose non Hall of Famer, which should be.
Yeah,
Spencer,
I
Spencer
got him in
Johnson.
my head
Yeah,
as a Hall of
I
Famer.
yep, yeah. So yeah, Rose is on that list, and the for the $100,000 list, again, a lot of them are the bigger names. Mays is not on there, and I'm trying to make up for that on the lower list. But the Aarons, the Mantles, Ted Williams, things like that, and the key rookie cards from the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Hmm.
Okay, those are the ones that made that list.
Hmm.
So for this smaller list, I want to complete more player runs.
Yeah, me too.
So I picked some players that again are not super expensive and that on average I could pick up for maybe, you know, 50, 75, $100 for maybe some of their harder
Hmm. Hmm.
cards. So I picked players like Frank Robinson, Harmon Killebrew, Jim Palmer, Johnny Bench
Hmm.
is on there as well. Uh, a bunch of Pete Rose cards, some Willie Mays, a few Roberto Clementes. Again, not too many because
Hmm.
especially with Mays, you start going too far back. Now it
Right.
goes over that average of $100. There's a couple of cards on the list that I'd like that are $150
Hmm.
because there's some that are around 75.
Right.
So it all averages out. So I couldn't go too deep for Mays or Clemente, but they're on the list to give me a jump start for
Right.
those players.
Do you share the list? I mean, can people see your
Yeah.
list? Okay.
Yep. On every one of my videos, well, at least for the pickup videos. So if you see, hey, the card number 10 on my list of 100 cards for $10,000
Hmm.
in the description of the video is a Google Doc where you
Hmm.
can click on and see what cards are on the list, which ones I've picked up, and what I've paid for the cards. And what's nice is I have on I have to pick a certain grade, okay, a certain grade and a price to put it on the list.
Hmm.
But my goal is to not necessarily. I know some people say, well, that's not truly the case for everyone, but I try not to buy the grade. I buy the card.
Absolutely.
Um, Sometimes I'm maybe into that gray area. I admit, but um, I just picked up one that I think I had on my list in a six, I think six, maybe even a seven
Hmm.
for around $100. I just picked it up for around $30 in a four, and I love the look of the four. Yeah, the corner, yeah, the corners have a little, but oh, well centered, and I don't have it in hand yet. I literally just won it today
Right.
off of eBay. But it's another card on the list, and again, saving
Right.
$70.
Yeah.
So my intention is not to spend on average $100 for all these cards. I don't
Right.
need a six or a seven of some of these cards. Now I did
Right.
that 75 rows you mentioned. I did pick up in a seven.
Right.
I just got a good deal on it, and it happened
Right.
to be a seven. I'm like, well, okay,
Yeah,
but
like I think we focus on, and I'm a total victim of that. Whatever decade that card is, we try and go with the collector grade. But there's certain players out there, like if I'm going to look for a card from the '60s and I want to get a Hank Aaron card, well, 5 years ago it was easier to get a six. Well, now it's got to be a five or a four. You showed the '61 tops Hank Aaron, which I love that card.
yeah,
I love the '60, and you got
yeah.
that in the
I
four,
got it on
right? And
four.
stunning. I mean, really, really beautiful card.
Yep.
So I was a tough victim on. I was strict looking at the grade first, and that took me a lot of years, man, to like, you know, just look at the card. Look
Yep.
at your budget and look at the card. If it's a grade lower, even two grades lower, who cares? The card is the card, and especially if it's a player like Hank Aaron.
Hmm.
or Mickey Mantle or Willie Mays. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
the
think I have
value's there. The
one
value's
here.
there for those players. So
I think I have the 61 here somewhere.
I love that card. I'm actually eyeing two of them right now. I'm trying to get that because I'm doing
I
a
know.
Hank Aaron run.
I recently have a stack here of the stuff that I. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So that's the Aaron and a four, and it's just it's not perfectly centered, but man,
Right,
and for the price I paid for a four versus getting a five or a six, I don't need
right.
that because hey, if I can save 5-10 bucks, even literally 5-10 bucks on a card for me can help
But it adds
buy
up.
another card.
Yeah, and that's another thing. The money you're saving on a previous card, you either save it or you could put that towards getting another card maybe better on something like that. So it all,
Yep.
I mean,
I
I
love PSA fours. I of course because when I started, I mentioned 2020 when I got on YouTube and I started to build a collection. That was like the worst time to start
yeah,
a vintage collection because prices were like, oh my gosh, if I only started like 10 years ago. But of
yeah,
course, I was into Boggs and stuff. But hey, so I've had to deal with now they've come down a little bit, vintage prices, but I was dealing in a market where I originally wanted that collector grade. So
yeah,
I started off with the cards in the 70s. Oh, I'll get them in sevens. Oh, that's not bad.
right.
Okay, well let me look for a 74 something. Ooh, in a seven.
Yeah,
Ooh, okay, that's getting a little bit salty for me. Like I can't. So well, maybe I'll look for sixes. And then I'm
right.
like, forget about the grade number grade now. I'm,
Yeah,
I'm just going for budget. If I can find a, to me, it's eye appeal.
right.
Centering. We're both centering people.
Big time, big time.
Yeah.
I don't know where that got started. It started about 4 or 5 years ago, where I saw the investor grade and collector's grade, and I'm going to admit it, I went right into that. I was like, yeah, because I didn't know what grades were good to get and what grades were not good to get, and I delved right into that philosophy of like investor grade is one higher than the decade, and collector's grade is that decade. Well, now that's gone because prices of
Yep.
vintages are going so through the roof that it's okay to get one grade, two grades lower, and half grades are great too. Like
Oh yeah.
4.5.
Yep.
I just bought a 59 Frank Robinson that I
Oh
wanted it in a five,
yeah.
and I saw 4.5 that is perfectly
A-
centered, and
And
it
if
was
you
like
compare the two,
$40 cheaper.
yeah. And you know, I've seen when I was looking for this uh four. Well, I wasn't looking. Well, see, here's where I get into the gray area. Um, I don't collect the grade, but I look at what prices are in certain grades, and I say this is where I can afford a
Right.
card. So for this Aaron here, I could afford at the time a four.
Hmm.
Was I looking for a four? No, but I
No.
found that now, if my budget allowed for a five, I may say I'll look for a four or a five.
Right.
Okay, so that's where the grade comes
Right.
in
You
at.
have to start somewhere when you're
Yeah,
creating the list. Right.
and when I first started, collecting graded vintage cards, because prior to my vintage cards were ungraded. Okay,
Hmm.
and so getting into vintage, so I'm like, okay, so what grades like you like? Well, what grade do I collect? And so I
Hmm.
initially was like, oh, I see people calling, talking about this collector grade, and so let me
Yeah.
let me go for those, and that's what I was focused on the
Me
number.
too. Yep.
And over time, I think, and I think many people may be starting off. That's why they like look at the number grades. But I think as you advance as a collector, you start looking beyond the number and look at the card itself. And
Hmm.
if you like the card, I mean, I have a 1950 Bowman Yogi Berra in a two.
Me
It's
too.
gorgeous.
Yeah,
It
I
has some
remember. Yeah,
hairline
yeah.
creases on an angle, but you look at that and you go, it's a beautiful because it's
It's a
well
beautiful.
centered.
I know your card. Yeah, that's a
There's some
beautiful
love
barrel.
to it. The corners are a little,
Yep.
they're not
Yep.
perfect, but well centered, and you don't see the crease until you put it at a certain angle
But
in a
that's not
two.
the eye
And I'm like,
appeal when you
I love
to
it.
look at it like this is not eye appeal. On eye appeal is when you look at it like this,
Yeah.
at arm's length. That's what I always say to people.
Yep.
But yeah,
Or on a wall. If you walk by and you go, "Man, that's a
that looks
gorgeous card."
awesome.
Yeah.
That looks awesome. No,
That
I'm
that's
totally
that's
agree
to
with
me
you.
what I want. So I have really, I'll call it advanced as a vintage collector over the last 4 years
Hmm.
to going from worrying about a certain number grade to staying within a budget and looking for a nice eye appeal card to me.
Mm-hmm.
Again, my eye appeal may be different than someone else's eye appeal. Someone may be, hey, I want four sharp corners. If it's off center, that's how it came from the factory,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it should be, and I enjoy, and that's fine. I If I look at a card now, I can have some off centering. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it all depends on what my eye sees first.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the 53 Bowman color cards, my Warren Spawn is off center top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at that Spawn card, the first thing I look at that the patch on
Mm-hmm.
his sleeve and his hat. That's my focus. I don't even see the borders.
Right.
There are other cards where borders are more prominent that you look at it and the first thing I see is the border. And if that's offset, I can't enjoy the card.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be perfect. And to me, it's very individual. It could be not just a different set, but a different
Mm-hmm.
player, a player's
Right.
card.
That's the
Just
next thing I was
how
going to
how it
say.
is. I can thumb through, and they're not all going
Right.
to be perfectly centered. But when I look at the card, my eye is going to be focused on whatever it is. I'm going to be happy with it,
Right.
and that's what I look personally. What I look for.
Right. And I think we got stuck in that, and I'm a total victim of that, of this collector grade, investor grade 4 or 5 years ago, because we were looking at the value. If it's a certain player, and I say there's like a list of 10 players that I call big time legends: Mantle, Aaron, Mays, Clemente, Koufax, Jackie Robinson, Ted Williams, Stan Musial.
Mhm,
The grade doesn't matter because those guys are so iconic that
mhm.
you can go 2 grades below the collector's grade.
Oh yeah.
Don't worry about the value because those cards just they'll never drop. They'll always
Yep.
stay steady or eventually. So I learned the hard way, and I tell people all the time when, yeah, if you want to get something a little more modern from the 70s or 80s and you want to go with that collector grade, investor
Yep.
grade, have at it.
Yeah.
But when you're getting into like the 60s and 50s, I don't approach collector grade and investor grade anymore, especially of certain players that don't matter what you get.
Yeah.
If it's a
Well, Jackie
Mantle and
Robinson,
Aaron,
I mean, unless you have pretty big budget or you can do a trade or whatever,
right?
um, you start getting into the 49 Jackie Robinson cards or 50 Jackie Robinson cards. I
Take an
think for
authentic.
most collectors, let's just say most collectors, you're hoping to get a two and maybe even be able to afford that. So
Yes,
collector grade for that is just thrown away
that's
just
out the
because of
window.
how expensive the cards are.
Yeah,
So yeah, you have those that just from a budget standpoint,
right,
you almost you're most of us are
right,
forced to look at those really low grades.
right.
I picked up a 54 Bowman Mantle at last year's
Yes,
national.
last
It's in a
year's
one,
national. Yep,
but I got it for under $500, and yeah, there's creases in it. There's no doubt there's creases in it.
it's a one.
But I thought, hey, do I want to save up and have to spend $1,000, $1,500 for a three or a four?
You can get
I,
3 or 4
I
cards
like
with
the
that
look of the
money.
card. It's worn, it's vintage. It has,
Right.
some kid played with it or whatever,
Hmm.
and it's not that bad. There are
Right.
lots of surface wrinkles, but at this arm's length,
Uh,
I
Eye
like it.
appeal
So
is this.
that's
Eye
what matters
appeal
to
to
me.
me is arm's length. That's
Yeah,
eye appeal. But yeah, when it comes to certain players, I don't think that a collector's grade and the investor grade for me goes. I learned that the hard way, and that goes right out the window for me. I mean, um, yeah, I mean, a 52 tops mantle. I don't care if it was cut in half and taped back together. It's just the player is so iconic that
hmm
it doesn't matter.
yeah,
So let's get into the future now. What's in store for you? Like, what do you want to do now? Another list
yeah.
or more player? Like, what do you have? I'm curious. What are your
Yeah,
future goals?
obviously to eventually get as many cards as I can off that $100,000 list. I
Hmm.
figure realistically in the next, 5, even 10 years that I
Hmm.
could maybe get to 90, 95 on that list
Totally
within
realistic.
within reason.
Yep.
Okay. It would take some savings for each one. It's going to be
Hmm.
slow going, but I think I can make a really, really good, go at the
Hmm.
100. The smaller ones, The way I'm going with this first $10,000 list, sometime next year, I'll get and I also did those lists on purpose to say I can complete it. I can get all 100.
Mhm,
They're not,
mhm,
oh my gosh, dream cards or comic cards or whatever. They're all reasonable.
mhm.
And so once that list is done, I'm like, okay, let's pick some other players that I want to maybe build some player runs on,
Okay.
focus on that. So yeah, there's going to be list number two of
Mhm,
10,000 cards. But like I said, in the meantime, if I come across a card that whether at a card show or on eBay, and I look or someone shows off on one of their videos, and I go, whoa, oh, that's a cool card. And I go find one. Yeah, I may do that, but uh, that's fine. But it still keeps me relatively on a
mhm.
particular path.
Right.
So yeah, you're going to see probably more and more of these 100 card lists. Maybe throw in maybe a 50 cards for 100
Mhm,
or $10,000 or something. If I want to say build more on the Clemente and Mays
mhm.
runs, I may have to put a smaller list because they're going to cost more.
Right,
We'll see, but
right.
I always like having a list or multiple lists.
Mhm,
And again, I'm going to continue my Boggs collection in some way
mhm,
or fashion. That's never going to end.
mhm,
But the majority of my hobby dollars are going to go toward
mhm.
building my vintage collection in the
Right.
future.
And you currently do these other lists that I see, and you were doing pretty much every Topps year, top 10 rankings and sales from like 80 tops,
Yep,
79,
1980 all the way
78,
back.
and you've pretty much finished that. But I noticed that you proposed a question out there to people to continue. Talk a little bit about that now. What's coming up in the future as to what some of the sets out there that I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to seeing.
Um, I started doing this. It was a weekly series. So every week,
Hmm.
usually on a
Hmm.
Wednesday, I feature a new set, and I started with 1981. It allows me to do a little bit of research on the set itself,
Right.
right? Because again, I'm still fairly new into vintage. I know the players. I can tell the designs for year and stuff, but
Hmm.
what makes up in the history of each particular set I was
Right.
interested in. So I do a little bit of research and then I go into the top 10 most valuable cards within that set. And next week, I think I'll be at 1948 Bowman. So um,
Nice.
so that's the post-war era.
Hmm.
Now, what I'm probably going to do is maybe some of the off name sets, the Red Heart, the Red Man sets, maybe some others from the 50s. And then I'm going to get into pre war, looking
Hmm.
at some of the play balls, the Gaudis, the Diamond Stars, Cracker Jacks, go just, and I'm going to ask for input because I don't just do it for myself.
Hmm.
Hopefully I can provide some knowledge on the background of some of these
Yes.
sets and just it's not so much. Yeah, it's nice to look at all these big numbers of what some of these cards are worth, but just get a sense of the ranking of the players.
Yep.
So you start in say the 60s, and you see Mantle. Okay, Mantle's
Hmm.
in usually like number one. Every once in a while, oh, it's number two because there's the Nolan Ryan rookie or something, and so you get a chance to see where these players fit in terms of value because in some sense value equals popularity, the
Right.
supply and demand. So
Right.
which players for that year were probably more popular, hence
Hmm.
they're more valuable. And it's interesting to see how some of these the bigger names change in terms of rankings. I just did the 49 leaf set, and it was interesting that Warren Spawn was just off the list at number 11, like because some of the short prints
Yeah.
made it on because there's so many short printed cards in that 49 leaf set that there's just some of them are more sell for more than. But man, the winningest left-handed pitcher of all time, Warren Spahn, was out of the top 10, and that's the case for a couple sets. He was just off the top 10. You think, man, like he doesn't get that much hobby attention. So it's good to see where some of these players rank within the hobby.
Yep.
It's not their career stats. Prices are dependent on demand
Right.
of collectors within the hobby. people want Mickey Mantle cards more than they want Warren Spawn cards. It's
Yeah,
just a fact.
it's the
So
way
his
it is.
cards
Yeah,
sell for more than Warren Spawn, and so it gives hopefully the viewers a sense of where some of these players rank within the hobby.
sure. Yeah, so you're going to be continuing on with that. You're going to be doing. You said a lot of sets from the 30s like Galaxy and Play Ball and 41, and I'm looking forward to it. The regional sets, great idea. Red Man, Red Heart. I mean, just keep the. I love it. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah,
So,
and I'll be asking for suggestions. So
mhm,
if there's a set that you want to see me highlight and do a sort of top 10 most valuable cards from, let me know. And yeah, if it has to be a set that has a decent number of cards in it
mhm,
to give a nice range of players to pick a
mhm.
top 10. Well, it's not picking a top, finding a top 10. Um, but yeah, I find it interesting to explore some of the
And it's
background of
informative.
those pets. So
I wanted to ask you if now you've already gone through. You said from 81 to like 49. The sets, the values change. So, have you thought about maybe revisiting 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and doing it all over again? Because
that's a possibility. You are right. Not
change
only do
change a
values
lot.
change, but for some of them, I mean, the rankings between say third, fourth, and fifth are maybe like $10, and it's just off of current VCP average price. So
Hmm.
you get one more. I could do a video, and there could be a couple sales a month later that can change the order. So yeah, you're right. Not only on the value itself, but the rankings of some of the
Yeah,
cards could definitely change. Yeah, that's something that maybe after
a
2 years or
decent
so
amount of
after I've
spent.
gone
Yeah,
through some of the first round of sets,
like a
maybe
volume
revisit
two.
and do an update. That's a possibility to keep things going as well.
I think
Yeah,
so because it's another volume. I mean, what's that catalog? The standard vintage catalog. They don't do it every year, but they
yeah,
do because how many vintage sets can you find?
yeah.
But they're create the last one I think came out in 14, and there's supposed to be another one coming out this year, 10
Mm,
years later. And I'm like, man, they found more sets. They
yeah.
found more sets. So
Wow.
uh, this is something that I think you can redo it again because things change. The ranking's going to change. New cards could be that weren't on it at all. Can be on there. So I would welcome that too.
Yeah. I love these are sort of a labor of love. There's a lot of you have to look up the
I
data
know,
and
yeah,
do all that stuff,
but
but
that's the
I
fun part.
enjoy doing them,
Yeah,
and so they're not just for clicks and views or whatever.
yeah,
I'm actually really interested in finding out more about these sets
yeah,
and doing the research and putting the videos out
exactly.
there. So yeah, the more sets that I can do, the better. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing, like you said, the pre-war stuff. That I'm really looking forward to that because I'm curious. Like everybody knows, if you mention 33 Gaudy, they know the Ruths and the Garrigs and Fox and Grove, but you're doing top 10, so there's going to be other cards. I'm like, oh man, I didn't think about that card. That's a cool card to get.
mhm.
Archie Vaughn or whoever. Like I'm really interested in seeing those cards when you get into like 41 play ball and for like what is in that set other than the obvious names that everybody knows. So
Yeah, yep.
more so this than the other stuff as this pre-war stuff. I'm really curious to see that because
Yeah, my
it's going to be
knowledge of
really interesting.
pre-war is very limited.
But we're all going to
Um,
learn from this right now. That's
yeah,
why I'm looking forward to this because I only know the big names on there, like we all do, and Garrick and Ruth and Feller or DiMaggio. I want to see what else is on. What are some of the other
yeah. The
big
play
cards in
balls are
there?
going to be interesting for me
Yeah,
because you think, okay, DiMaggio and Ted Williams. Okay,
yeah.
what other ones are in this? I
I don't
honestly
know.
don't know
I don't know.
what other ones are in the set. So those 2 years, the 3 years, 39, 40, and 41
Yeah,
are going to be really interesting for me when I get to them
yeah,
of just learning about the set in general
yeah,
and what are some of the big cards in the set.
yeah. There's a black and white set, 36 Gaudy, that
Yeah.
someone told me is an up and coming set. And I'm like, really? And they're like,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
actually I noticed I was doing this. Well, like, what are the Gaudy years? I'm like 36.
Yeah,
Like
it's a
what?
small
So I'm like,
I think it's only like
okay.
60, 70 cards in there, but there's like Hank Greenberg is in there.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I'm like, holy crap, like
I
that's
think
awesome.
yeah, they're black and white, and I think have a facsimile autograph to them.
Autograph on there. It's
Yeah.
And someone said to me, everyone's looking at, like, I was asking, like, well, what cards in certain in sets from the 30s that are good. I know 33 Gaudy, 34 Gaudy, and then a friend of mine mentioned, look at the 36 Gaudy. It's been getting some. It's because everyone focused on 33 and 34. 36 has been getting up in popularity. It's black and white. It has this facsimile signature, and there's some good names in there. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
so I'm looking forward to seeing that one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you coming on, John. I mean, I can go on for 3 hours
Well,
with
I
you.
know, I know you get like to keep these episodes short, and we're probably way over, and we could go for another
Uh,
2 hours, but
I don't care, but when I get to this one, that means I'm enjoying it. So I appreciate you coming on for this episode, and I wish you luck with the lists and everything. I look forward to them every week, and I learn a lot, and I think they're informative, and I think you do a really good job for the community, and I appreciate everything that you do. So
well,
it
thank you.
was great having
I'll
you
put the
on.
20 bucks in the mail tomorrow. So
Oh, please make it 30. No. All right, John. Thanks once again. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to another episode of Sports Card Memories, episode number 4 with John Wade, Boggs fan. His link is down below. We both hit the milestone, 2,000 subs this month.
yes, yep.
Good kudos.
Congratulations, Ray.
Yeah, you too, man. And I'll make sure I'll get your video for your contest.
Good.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Like I always say, have fun with it, and I will see you real soon. Take care.